about when you have a life that has crime in it and has fraud and everything, I am also doing the same thing. I'll obscure my name potentially. People in my field do a lot of things that are manipulative, and so we're doing a lot of the same types of things, same skills, same everything. But somehow my world is a lot more legal than your world was.
Right. Yeah. Do you know who Andrew Bustamante is?
Sure. Yeah.
So I've interviewed him a few times, and hung out with him and stuff, and he always says that he's like, basically, that somebody would provide him with all of the documentation and for a cover story and the document everything and backup and everything, and he's like you had to come up with all that on your own.
Yeah.
And that's I think that the difference between being like a spy and a fraudster is that he's like, I had a whole team to support me, and and I had to figure out how to get the DMV to issue me a driver's license and the U.S. State Department to issue me a passport, and I had to figure out how to scam the banks out of money where he's on a payroll. That whole thing. Come up with a feasible story that could be checked out and come up with verification, so that if they did start making phone calls, there were people to answer that would verify what I told them. So in a way I can see that in that way it's a lot like being a spy. He had said that the things that he had done, had he done them in the United States, or had he done them and he wasn't working for the government, he's like, I'm a criminal. Yeah. Like I'm in another country getting these documents, living in this life that's not me, acquiring all these things. He's like, I'd be criminal. But
it's worse than that. He is criminal. I mean, like I often say, like, I'm a spy. I'm open about it, right? Because if the other side sees me and encounters me, they're gonna be like, you're breaking the law. We're gonna kill you. Like it is the same thing, because you have faked these documents or whatever it is. We have backstoppable legends. And so, like, you make a website, you invent a bank, the phone rings, somebody calls it, answers it, all of that. We do those things in the intelligence community. So really, it is like, in that regard, it's very, very similar to invent somebody out of whole cloth.
Right. So, yeah, I guess it's very similar in that respect.
Yeah. How do you get yourself weaned away from that kind of behavior? Because the game, and I'm positive you could figure out new ways to do it, but you don't want to go to prison, I imagine. But what was it like trying to get away from that life and the money that comes from that?
I mean, the government threw me in jail for 13 years.
Yeah,
that pretty much. That was that's pretty much it. I mean, it's not that I don't still think about it. I think about it all the time. I think about it actually less. I've thought about this the other day. When I initially got out of prison, I thought about it a lot, right? Like for years, I was constantly thinking about different scams and stuff. And I still think about it, but not in a way where it feels like I'm plotting. Now I think about it just more as a curiosity. But, I used to say that it was so comforting in prison to think about getting out of prison and committing fraud that it would just put me right to sleep. Like I would start going through my head, like, what's the first thing you would do? What would you do then? Where'd you get the ID? Where would you get the fulls, the social security numbers? Where would you get the credit cards? Where would you have them sent? Where would you say you were worked? How would you, I start slowly breaking down, and how much would that cost? How much would that burner phone cost? How much do you think that building that website's going to cost? How do you pay for that website? So I would slowly go through all of these things. And I mean, before I'm even really have established a synthetic identity, what you guys would call, a legend, before I've ever even put that person completely together to where it was able to be scrutinized by a bank or financial institution, I'd fall asleep. Like I couldn't get that. I couldn't even get to the point where I was actually committing like the actual fraud with the bank. I would just fall asleep because it was that comforting. When you lay in bed at night and I'm thinking about getting out of prison. What am I going to do? How am I going to kind of rebuild my life? I'm laying in bed and, I'm worrying, what I'm going to work at McDonald's. I'm never going to have any money. What's going to happen? I'm going to live in someone's spare room. I'm like, this is it. My life's over. This is how I'm going to live the rest of my life. And I'm trying to convince myself that that's okay, and it is okay. But I would start thinking about, but what if you did have to commit fraud? And I start thinking about that and boom, fall right asleep. The other thing kept me up awake at night, but just contemplating running a scam, straight to sleep.
Right. Is that divine? Was that professional help? How did you get to that point where you were so
thrown in prison? I got thrown in prison, and I thought about it. And here's the thing: after getting out of prison and kind of just trying to live my life like a normal person, and just trying to continually reminding myself to be thankful and humble that I was even out of prison, and that I should be happy and appreciative that I'm out of prison. Thinking about that for long periods of time and being happy with the very small pleasures in life, I think slowly kind of cured me, but it dissipated, like the urge to commit fraud dissipated slowly over time. And, and then of course I started having more and more success with what I'm doing now. And so that occupies a lot of my time. And then of course, once you start making money at something, you start thinking about it more and more. And so I don't have time to think about those other things. And so I'm happy.
There's a guy named Jack Barsky who was East German, and he was a spy for the Russians and came here embedded. And because I know that world, I'm talking to him like, how much time did you spend covering your spy work? And he's like, oh my God, Pete, I never got to sleep because I had a regular job in computers, coding and everything. I had my spy work I had to do, and then I had to do all the work to cover. He's like, there was no time. And he's like, I started making so much money in computers that I had to try to figure out how to get out of this stupid German spy thing that I was doing, and he just got inculcated into society partly by just not like, I can't do it. And ultimately breaks free from, the KGB and the East German side of things by just saying, I have AIDS. And so like, well, we don't want you back here. And that was how he was able to break free. But he was making so much money with his legitimate job that the other one didn't make any sense anymore. He had to get away.
Take your own death,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did you ever think about, there's people, we watch movies and we know of people that do steal enough money to simply disappear and go to an island. Would that have ever been enough for you? I know you were talking about like you were trying to get away at certain times, but would that have actually worked out?
I don't know. I don't know how much money you would have to pull that off. And I don't know how happy I would be isolated on some island. Like you have to do, it's like these people that say, well, if I won the lottery, I'd quit my job and I'd do this. And, I'd just be on vacation all the time. And would you? Like Elon Musk doesn't have to work. Bezos doesn't have to work. Like the truth is that if you gave me $100 million, like, yeah, I'd probably go on a vacation for 2 weeks and maybe come back for a week and go off for maybe a week. But honestly, I think after 2 months, I'd be like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Like, you have to have purpose in life, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't have purpose, so me, if I'd stolen a bunch of money and I disappeared and went to live in some little town in Mexico, like I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to get a job. I'm going to have to do something. And then just getting a job to blend in, is that enough? That's not really your purpose. I think being someone like Bustamante, who, went and he would go and work in like a factory, like they give him a cover and he works in a factory to, and while he's working there, he's also trying to kind of infiltrate the government or something. I don't know exactly, but he's trying to do that. He can stomach working in the factory because he feels he has a bigger purpose. So he can do that. It's like working in a factory. If you're working in a factory just to pay your bills and live in somebody's spare room and watch TV, that's not a great life. But most people that are working in the factory, they stomach it. Why? Because this is what gives me the money so that I can raise my children, so that I can go to their T-ball game, so that their purpose is to raise a family. The factory is just it's a side note. It's just a means to an end. And so I don't see getting a bunch of money and going to some island somewhere. Like, how much time can you lay in the sun? And you just can't. Like, it's just very quickly. I always have to be doing something.
Yeah.
I just not.
And also,
not
The
working.
feds are going to chase you regardless of where you go. You're always going to feel chased, and someone will always be chasing you.
Yeah, I think ultimately technology would have caught up with me at some point. I mean, right now, even right now, you could basically still kind of disappear, but you'd have to kind of live off the grid. But you have to get a driver's license, and it's not like everybody's like, oh, facial recognition. They're not running every single photo through facial recognition when you go to get a license. Like that's not what's happening. So they'd have to have some kind of an understanding of, hey, we heard that this guy got a driver's license here in the last year. Then they could maybe run those, and then can they get a warrant to do that? I think you could semi disappear, but boy, it'd be tough to do it forever. Like I said, I think eventually technology would have caught up with me. Would it have been by now, or would it have been when I was 65? I don't know.
Yeah, right. And would the stress have killed you? I mean, or you end up, who knows, right? Anything can happen. The other thing is banking is extraordinarily hard to manage if you are trying to live outside of the law. It's just very, very, because there is no physical money. I mean, this is the thing that freaks people out. The money never stops. It bounces around the world at the speed of light. Like when I get paid I've got a government disability check because I was a veteran. Before that money gets there, it's already accounted for, and it never sits in my vault. Right, it just moves all the time, and so if they can turn off your faucet, and nothing you can do about it, that's a problem you can't solve, and all that money would be gone in an instant. So now you have to worry about where you're going to stash your cash. That's dangerous, and so it just becomes this mounting problem. That is it worth it? Can you pull it off? Can you maintain a regular life? I don't think so.
Well, here's the problem too. Let's say you've got $5 million. You have to invest that money somehow, because first of all, living off the money it's going to go. It's going to slow. Right. Even if you're frugal, you're still going to spend $100,000 a year, $200,000. At some point, are you going to have a stroke and not be able to take care of yourself, and somebody has to take care of you, and they start looking through your finances, and they're like, this guy doesn't have a bank, or so you have to be able to get a bank, credit cards, vehicle loans, home loans, because you can't go into a closing and pull out $400,000 in cash to buy the house.
Right.
You have to be able to acquire a mortgage. You have to acquire credit cards. You have to. So, like I said, I on the other program, I had convinced Social Security to issue me Social Security numbers to children that don't exist. And I was able to build credit profiles with them and open up bank accounts and that sort of thing. And that's great if you're running a scam, but you can't live the rest of your life like that. That's why eventually I moved to surveying homeless people. I get the homeless people's information, and I go get a driver's license in their name and passports. And I would have more documentation saying I was this person than they actually had. Right. I'd have a better chance of proving I was the guy than if he'd shown up at the police department, and he'd have had a real hard time if I was standing right next to him, proving that I wasn't him.
Right. If he could ever get into that spot anyhow, right?
If he could get there, right?
That even happens, yeah.
And even then, the argument, of him saying, well, where'd you go to high school? Well, I went to high school here, and how you know that? Because I have the certified transcripts. Like I ordered everything on these guys. I ordered police reports. I ordered or their police record. I would order their high school transcript. I would register to vote as them. I had credit cards as them. I had cars in their name. I had mortgages in their name. I went on vacations as them. I'd go in and out of the country on the passports as them. So if they showed up, I mean, these guys I know because I would survey these guys. I go out and take a survey. They have no credentials. They have nothing. Sometimes you're like, well, can I see an ID or something just to make sure you give me the right information? They'd be like, oh, I don't have an ID. You don't have an ID? No. What do I need an ID for? You go, do you have any social security card? Maybe they'd have a debit card they might have a debit card for food stamps or something like that had their name on. Like I usually wanted to see something because someone will just lie to you. Mm-hmm. And I had little ways to kind of figure out if they were lying, but you ask for the social security number and their date of birth and everything up front. And then when you're done, you say, what was your social security number again? And you check so they can't see it. What was and if they're like, and they ramble off a different one, you're like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah.
They'll try and do that, But I would get their information and build the credit profiles. But like I said, you can't live that way. Like I remember thinking one time, how am I going to be able to maintain this, in perpetuity, right? Like it's tough. Like, and the only thing I could come up with this is going to sound horrible, was they got to go. Like, you got to get one of these guys. He's got to go. And, it was like, you buy some house. And I actually had the whole thing. I was like, so I buy a house. I grab one of these guys. I bring them there and tell them I'll pay them to dig a septic tank or something. You have them dig it out, get in the hole, and then you've got to get a 22 or something. You got to shoot him and leave him in the hole and fill up the hole. Now that I've already stolen his identity, I have all of his information. Like, otherwise you're done. Like, you have to live as this person indefinitely. And the problem is that you think, well, why don't you do that anyway? He lives under a bridge, because eventually this guy's going to die. When he dies, and the funeral home or the hospital is going to report it to the IRS in order to get the $250 death benefit. That's one of the reasons they give you a death benefit when you die, is so that you'll notify Social Security, so-and-so died. They give you the Social Security number, you get the check, and now Social Security on their list says this guy died.
Right.
If you're living as someone, you have to realize, living as this guy, and I may be able to live as him for the next 20 years, but when he dies, I'm going to have an issue.
Yeah.
So he has to, his death has to never be reported. How do you do that? Make sure he dies, nobody knows. And he's homeless, so nobody's probably going to know. His buddies are going to notice that he didn't show up, but I mean, he doesn't have family or anything. Maybe what's his brother driving around in circles saying, I see my brother every couple of months, I can't find him. And they tell the cops, I don't know what's happened. Cops are going to go, he's a homeless guy.
Yeah, he disappears all the time.
Yeah. We're not spending resources looking for a guy that's been homeless for 15 years.
Right. Yeah.
So even if, that was my only thought. And I thought, I can't kill anybody. I'm not a killer.
It turns out. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at me. I'm not a killer. So yeah, that was it. Like, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so I think it would eventually catch up with you. Absolutely. Maybe not now, but in 30 years. Look at all these old Nazis that they catch.
We still can't decide if those guys got away or not, and we got body parts and we're like, I don't know. And yeah, they still don't
catch
know.
them. They do catch them.
Oh, they still catch them for sure. But like, did Borman make it? Did Adolf make it? Did these guys make it out? And they're like, we think no, but we're not sure. And then someone goes and digs up evidence that they were in South America. We really just don't know about a lot of these dudes. It's crazy.
And that was back when you could acquire documents easily.
Right.
Now it's not easy to acquire the documents and take someone's identity. Like back then, if they could just get here, this is the 1940s and 50s, they could get here, walk into Social Security and say, hey, I've never had a Social Security number issued. And they go, oh, do you have a birth certificate? I do. And I'm a U.S. citizen. Or here's my stuff. They go, oh, okay. And they give you one. And and it would be yours. Yeah. But I was acquiring, the only way for me to acquire one from someone that was close to my age was he had to be close to my age. I had to steal it. I just steal his information.
Yeah.
But these guys could get stuff issued. You cannot go into Social Security now as a 40 or 50-year-old man and get a Social Security number issued to you. They're not going to do it. They're going to say, well, if you say, oh, yeah, are you a U.S. citizen? Yeah, I got my birth certificate. Here it is. They're going to go, okay. And they'll pull it up. They'll go, you've already had one issued. Or do you have a driver's license? How did you get a driver's license issued without a Social Security number? You see, immediately they're going to be like, we're calling the cops. This is all bullshit. Something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say this to close loop in the Nazi thing too. Even Dr. Mengele died and was buried before they're like, you know what? Let's dig that guy up. And if someone hadn't pushed it, he would have just been dead under somebody else's name. We never would have known. It's that close sometimes. And this is someone the whole world was at one point looking for, for sure, the Israelis. In the news lately has been Doge, and they're looking at Social Security. They did an interview the other day. They talked about all the fraud going on there. And they said 40% of the phone calls coming into Social Security are fraud-based. And they talked about all these millions of people that are on their rosters. Well, do you have any thoughts on Social Security? And I don't want you to make any political statements. I'm not asking for that. But what are your thoughts when you hear that, like there's fraud going on with Social Security?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of fraud. But I mean, when I think about fraud with Social Security, I think about people filing in other people's names. There's a scam that's out there that's big where I end up getting someone's Social Security number and I file their taxes before they do. So give you an example is that, let's say you work for Walmart and you make $40,000, right? And I get your Social Security number. I can go and file a tax return saying that you work at Bed Bath and Beyond, and you make $150,000 a year, and you need a tax return of $9,000, and they'll send a tax return for $9,000 to me. And you're saying, wait a second. First of all, I work for Walmart or wherever I said you worked. Where did I say? Did I say Walmart? Yeah, whatever it was. So
yeah, right.
You would be saying, I work for Walmart. This tax return is for somebody who works for Bed Bath and Beyond. I don't make anywhere near that. Why did you give them the tax return? Because the IRS doesn't check any of this. They don't. They take everything initially. What they do is initially they take everything you say as being the truth, and then they just issue the check. So if you've got the right information, they just issue the check. And so now you go to file your taxes, and they say, "Oh, we already issued you a check," and you go, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
You say,
"I don't know." Good.
Sorry. It's like you're saying, I haven't filed, and then you have to file a report. My identity was stolen. You have to go through the whole process. And then they eventually say, wow, we issued one to somebody. We mailed it to a separate address. It's complete, and you could say, well, I don't understand why because obviously Bed Bath and Beyond did not pay in the correct amount of employee withholdings as this person filed. And I've never received a W-2 from Bed Bath and Beyond. And that person used my social security number. Why would you believe that? Why didn't you see that Bed Bath and Beyond has never paid in on that social security number? No, they do not see that. And here's the thing, even if they looked and saw it and there was someone checking, they still have to issue the tax refund, because it's not on you that Bed Bath and Beyond didn't pay in the employee withholdings to the IRS. It's on the IRS. So if Bed Bath and Beyond went under and never paid in, they took out taxes on your $150,000 and they never sent it to the IRS. Are you still owed a refund? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not up to you. You can go after them. They took the money from me. By law, you said that I had to allow them to do that. That's between you and them. You still owe me X amount of dollars.
Right.
So that's the way, that's kind of the way that worked. So when I think about IRS fraud, that you're thinking of the guy's 150 years old and he's still getting a check.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's just, listen, that their whole system is antiquated. The people that are running the government are not capable. Most of these people couldn't run a small business and function, and yet they're dealing with trillions of dollars and making decisions.
Right. Yeah.
It's pure stupidity. Really on the American part too, on the American part, because you're electing people that can't run a business. Yeah.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, the United States is the biggest business in the world. The
biggest employer.
There used to be what's that?
The U.S. government is the largest employer in the world.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Back in the 80s, there was a lady named Dorothea Puente, and she lived in Sacramento, and she had a boarding house for old folks. She was old herself, but she wasn't as old as them. And as they died, she just buried them in the backyard.
Yeah.
A hilarious shirt. It was like American Gothic, and it had her with the shovel, and she said, "Sacramento, I dig it." But she got in trouble, and so these people didn't die because no one reported it, and they were just in her backyard, and she didn't. We don't know if she killed. We don't think that she killed it. Maybe she did, but I mean, she did that for a long time, and that's a decent amount of money if you've got 4 people in your backyard.
Well, the government believes she killed them because they charge her with murder of several people. But some of the people she said died of natural causes. Sorry, but the biggest thing what she would do was she would wait until you'd signed over your Social Security or your benefits to her. So she would say, sign them over to me, or she knew the checks were coming there and she was able to deposit those checks in her account. Once that happened, she didn't need you living in the house anymore. Now you're just a burden. She figured out a way to poison you or something along those lines, killed you, and then had another guy help bury. Buried so many bodies in the backyard, she had to start dumping the bodies. And that's where the scheme,
arsenic and old lace. That's right. I forgot about that part of it. You're right. Yeah.
Because some of the people's family started complaining, and it just fell on deaf ears. That the cops were like, okay, so the cops would show up and ask her questions. She'd go, yeah, he fell in love with some woman in Mexico. He's been down there a few times. He said he went to Mexico. He said he's going to come back. I mean, he's done this before. Then they go to the family. Family will be like, that's absolutely not true. He's never been to Mexico. He doesn't know any. And they would go, okay, well, listen, I mean, his stuff's still there. She said he's going to come back. What do you want us to do? Yeah. He's a homeless guy that kind of lives in and out. He's all right. He's got mental problems and he lives in a like a boarding house. Like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah. And you don't start with the sweet old Mexican ladies offing these people and burying them in their backyard. That's not where you start.
No, she wasn't Mexican, but and you know the other thing about her, by the way, the other thing about her was she told everybody she acted like she was 60 or 70 years old. She was just like 20 years younger.
Wow.
And bro, there's a whole documentary. You got to watch it. She was a character. Yeah. She was a character. Yeah. She'd been in prison for fraud.
That's so crazy. Yeah, you could. I used to live in Sacramento, so you could drive by her house, and it was just kind of one of those surreal things where, like, that's where all that happened. And then you don't even think about the fraud part of it because there's dead people. But yeah, you're right. It's a crazy thing. In the I don't know, maybe around 99, 2000. I got a bill from the IRS, $356,000, I think it was. I had made $50,000 that year. I didn't even have $200,000, let alone have to pay $350,000. And I always wondered if that was fraud. And I had called the IRS, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's obviously an error," but they didn't push the fix it button, you know. And so the guy's like, and I was going through a divorce, and I'm like, listen, I don't have any money. I'm going through a divorce. I'm just trying to survive. Probably going to lose my house. And the guy's like, listen, you don't have any money. We don't even care. We're not going to come after you. And this is a long time ago, right? So maybe something else would happen. He's like, but the God's honest truth is no, you're not going to trip any red flags. Try to see if you can make it go away. And he said, it's going to basically be impossible for you to fix this because you're going to have to hire an attorney, which you can't do. So put it off, ignore it. It's going to go away, you know? And so, you know, that was it. That was ultimately what the strategy was. And when I would try to fix it, he was right. It was impossible to fix. They're like, what are you talking about? You know, that's the craziest thing. But I mean, this is the kind of thing it goes to and if it happened to me, it's happened 10,000 times, right? Someone else is like, what do you mean I owe $50,000 or whatever the number is? Mine was ridiculous because it was like 6 times my base salary, you know, and there was no like stock transfer, none of that, right? And I was like, how can this be? And he's like, yeah, clearly I can see how much you made. And that doesn't make, but he couldn't himself fix it. And so when you look at the Social Security thing, it is something that's exploitable. This is the spy talking now, right? I look for things that are exploitable. These people don't keep good records, at least depending on the time frame we're talking about. I can set something up that will, at least temporarily, you know, give me a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew a guy that ran a scam in prison with using the IRS. It was he would buy a business or create a business, and then he would file with the IRS. So he opened a business like in his grandmother's name, and then he had the IRS report. He then at the end of the year filed taxes on the business, saying the business had made X amount of dollars and that he was an employee, and that he would tell the IRS that they had paid him whatever it was, $400,000 or something. He then filed taxes saying, I worked for this business. I made $400,000 and you owe me a return of $80,000. The IRS would pay him. He did it all the way up to the point where one time it went all the way up to like 1.5 million and they cut him a check for like $400,000. He did this for years. It only caught up with him. At some point it caught up with him because he did it with a friend of his, and his friend ended up going and buying some large item or something. And it sparked kind of he started taking cash out. It sparked a interest from the IRS. They looked into it. And when they came by just to ask him about it, he immediately said, listen, this is what I did. My buddy's been doing it for years. Because the other buddy had been doing it, and he told me, don't do anything stupid. Don't pull a bunch of money out in cash. Don't buy anything in cash. You know, don't buy anything ridiculous. And the guy had done, I forget what he did exactly, but he started going in saying, hey, can I get 40,000 in cash? No, can't get 40,000 in cash. Or, you know, and then they said, well, you can if you go to this cash transaction bank, and they'd schedule it for him to get 40 grand in cash. But then they file a cash transaction report and a suspicious activity report. Guys bringing out hundreds of thousands. Next thing you know, IRS showed up, started asking questions.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy.
But yeah, but the IRS never questioned the other guy because he had worked for this company that was filing taxes every year and saying they were paying him this massive amount of money. And so for him, even though they were trying to contact the company, they'd send letters. We haven't received your money. You haven't filed this. You haven't done this. What's going on? He just ignored them. Next year he'd file again, send in the money. He said, I just kept ignoring him. He said they never once went to him because his lawyer had explained that, yeah, well, that's between the IRS and that business. You're just an employee. They said they've been holding the money. Got nothing to do with me. I work there. I don't know what's going on with the people that own this business, but they paid me $1.1 million. They withheld $400,000, and I'm filing my taxes on it. He'd say all kinds of ridiculous stuff. I've got solar panels. I bought an electric vehicle. He would say anything he could get a tax refund for, he would do. And they just never caught it with him. They happened to catch it with the other guy. And they didn't even catch it with them. It was just because he was pulling out cash.
Yeah.
Just stupid.
Yeah,
anyway.
That's crazy. So in theory, they could have kept going if they had both just kept small and just enjoyed the fact that they had financial security. Yeah.
So, the other thing about the, it's like, have you ever heard about the Amazon? Some guy scammed them for, I don't know what it was, $1 or $2 million just by sending them invoices every once in a while for.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He's came up with a bunch of dummy invoices and dummy bank accounts and just started mailing them $120, $630, $1,500, $400. And they just start paying them. They're getting the invoices and they just start cutting the checks. That happens a lot.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny. Actually, I not to defraud anybody, but I was frustrated by customer service, and I'm like, I bill at this rate. So if I have to call you guys back to fix your problem, I'm going to bill you. And so they called my bluff. And so I sent them an invoice. And the funny thing was all of a sudden the manager called and he's like, hey, what's this invoice? I'm like, well, you guys are wasting my time. And so I got paid for it. That's my invoice. And I didn't want the money, but that manager called and all of a sudden it was important to get that thing dealt with. And I'm like, I don't want the money, but I want you guys to do your job. And if you waste 6 hours of my time, I'm going to bill you for that. Don't waste my time. Call me, But you're right. That thing hit someone's accounts receivable payable office, and they're like, what is this? Because they were small enough to go, what is this? We don't know about this vendor, right? And that caused that thing to fix. But anyhow, it's I guess technically that could be fraud, but I wouldn't have, would I have taken the money? Maybe, I don't know. If they would have actually sent me a check, that'd be hilarious. When you're winding your way into this fraudster life and it's illegal, how do you deal with your conscience back then? Like, do you just push it to the side? When do you realize, like, I'm really in this thing deep, I'm kind of committed? Because, you go pretty far into the whole thing. But at some point, like, it's just like little baby steps, right?
Right. Go ahead.
So when did you find yourself like, I'm actually ensnared in this thing? And was there relief when you finally get arrested and it's like, oh, this is now over?
Yeah, so the first part of the question is that, it didn't bother me. Like I was not upset by it. I was not, I don't know how much of a psychopath I am or,
right.
But, everybody, there's a scale. Everybody's on it. You might be a 1 or 2 or something, but everybody has a certain amount of it. And people are like, oh, did your conscience bother you? No, it didn't bother me at all. Taking $200,000 or $50,000 or $300,000 from Bank of America or SunTrust Bank didn't upset me at all. And then when I was on the run, I was not worried. I mean, being on the run, it was, I know lots of people there get asked that question, that guys that were on the run, like, were you worried all the time? Like, I'm not an idiot. I wasn't driving a stolen car with a broken taillight and a body in the trunk. I've got a driver's license issued by the DMV. I have a passport issued by the State Department. I'm living in a house or a condo that was rented in this person's name. I'm driving a vehicle in their name. I have full coverage insurance. I have a driver's license. I'm not concerned at all about driving or being pulled over. I think I mentioned this before. I got so many tickets in this guy's name that I'd stolen his identity, got a driver's license in North Carolina. I got so many tickets in his name. I had to go to traffic school as him to keep from losing the license. So, I wasn't worried. Like I wasn't the kind of person that was, couldn't buy a vehicle because they couldn't get a driver's license. I have a driver's license. I could get pulled over. Here's my driver's license. My name's Gary Sullivan, or here's my driver's license. my name is Michael Eckert, or whoever I was, and they could run it and they'd come back and they'd write me a ticket and say, all right, thanks, man. Keep it below 70, no problem. And so I wasn't worried. I wasn't looking over my shoulder all the time. When I got caught, it was, it was a horrible day. I wasn't relieved. I was like, fuck, this is horrible.
Yeah. Court sucks too. I mean, that's just hangs on you heavy, and you've got to deal with it and make these decisions that, it's just awful. If your lawyer is in any way not great, it's worse. So it's just like you're just in this spot of constant tension. And I've been to court, and when you're the defendant and you wear a suit, because you should, and they look at you like, oh, who are you defending today? Like, no, I am the defendant. And you see the lawyers just yucking it up with each other, including your lawyer. And you're like, these motherfuckers aren't taking my life very serious. And then I thought to myself, I guess I didn't take my life very serious either. I've got to sit back and let these people live their life. But everything for me was perilous, and I didn't like that. And I'd rather be in combat than in court. If I'm the person who's going to sit in that right side table, that's not fun.
Yeah. I mean, actually, the first time I got in trouble, I was wearing a suit, obviously. Second time I got in trouble, I was in like a jumpsuit,
Yeah.
Remember my lawyer was like, do you want me to go? I can go get you some clothes. I was like, come, what? Like, we know it. It is what it is. Like, these people know that I'm not here in a suit. They know I'm coming in the side door. I'm not walking in the courtroom with everybody else. I'm coming in the side door. I got shackles on. Like, it's so, but they are very friendly and joke around with each other. And you're just one of the many, defendants that's going to pass through that court that day. It's a machine.
Yeah. It's a machine.
Yeah.
When you so you convert over and you start writing these stories, and you have this wonderfully. If you guys haven't watched it, you should definitely watch the show. It's Inside True Crime, and it's fantastic. But you convert into this thing. When did you realize? I mean, just the YouTube side of this alone is, look, it's like a miracle. Like, to be that successful, it's just almost impossible, because there's millions and millions of channels, but there's only so many that have anywhere near 100,000, and you're way beyond that. So when you look at that,
600,000.
God, isn't that ridiculous? Like, you got all this work to defraud people. All you had to do was go tell these stories on YouTube. And you're like, so crazy, right? It's nuts. Do you like YouTube better than like writing and trying to work on the other aspects of your creative pursuits that get you money?
I would love to just write, but nobody reads books. Nobody's reading. Nobody's, it's in it. And to get like a movie made or something like that, there's so many hurdles to jump through.
Yeah.
And I like talking to these guys about their stories. I like talking to other criminals about what they did, how they figured it. How they figured it out. What was the genesis of the idea? How did they go about pulling it off? Like, what were the pitfalls? What hurdles came up along? Hurdles. What what roadblocks came up along the way that they had to get over or figure out how to get around? The close calls. Like, I love these guys' stories. So YouTube it's a natural. It's a natural platform, because we just have to set up the cameras and have me shoot the shit with some guy, just like I would shoot the shit with them if I was in federal prison, walking the track, or sitting in the chow hall talking like, hey, you were here for bank, or you were here for scamming or bank robbery or drug, like, what happened? Like, and they're like, oh man, see, here's what happened. And then they tell you, man, how long were you doing it? Oh, I've been doing it since I was a kid, man. Well, who got you into it? Oh man, my brother was a big time drug dealer. And then they tell their whole story, and it's the same thing. I just sit down with them and talk to them, and 2 hours later it's over and they leave. And, my editor cuts it all up and sticks it on YouTube, and the video gets, sometimes it's 12,000 views, sometimes it's 800,000 views, you know? We only have one video that's over 1 million.
Yeah.
And it was a story that I didn't think was going to get over 1 million.
Yeah. I would say, and I know a number of very successful YouTubers, and I would say that nobody knows. You know, you can go out and pour your heart and soul into something, really be passionate about, like, this is really interesting, it's going to do great. And just it doesn't satisfy the algorithm, really. I'll just blame the algorithm here in this case. Like, I'll put a video up or a short, and it'll go like a rocket up to a point, and then I'm not allowed to go past that point, and then boop, flatline. And I'm like, that thing went from being a straight up rocket. It didn't ever like kind of just slow down. No, it just goes flat. And I think there's a lot of that in the YouTube thing, where just the nature of the beast, no matter how big you are, it's just going to stop certain things at certain times. I don't know. You know, like, I'll take out an ad and I'll run an ad on YouTube, and it'll like run my ad at 2 a.m. And I'm like, 2 a.m? That's the time you picked? All right. And so there's all these random things inside of the YouTube world that impact it. But still, here you are, 600,000 subscribers. That's bigger than most national network news, you know, and to get that many people. Yeah, it's huge.
Taking a long time. It's taken 4.5 years at this point. And we at 2 years, we were at 50,000. And then the next year it jumped to like, then it probably jumped from 50 to 150 over the next year or so. And then it just in the last, and then the last year and a half is when we got the like 400 some odd, like 400,000 in the last year. Like, it blew up in the last year. And that's, sometimes it takes people 7 years and they're doing it, and they've got 5,000 subscribers in 7 years, and then bam, it just hits. Some people never make it. Some people will go 7 years. Or Danny Jones. Danny Jones was a friend of mine. He has a big time. He just hit 1 million subscribers. He went, I think he said 3 years. In 3 years, it took him 3 years to get 7,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
And now he's got 1 million.
Yeah. It's
crazy. You just don't know. You don't know.
You don't know. Yeah. I'll have a show go gangbusters, and I'm like, wow, how do I do that again? And little YouTube's all adorable. It's like, oh, Pete, what a show. Why don't you post more like that? And I'm like, well, what about this one? And they're like, no, thanks.
Yeah, I love it. It's like more people, it tells you like more people are watching this video, and it gives you all these little tries that like the pep talks.
Yeah, the pep talks. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, in the studio, the pep talks in the studio. Honestly, we've constantly been tweaking to the point where we're at right now, where we've got our very standardized thumbnails, a very standardized opening. Everything is very standardized. What's changing is the guests, and that's all you really need to have a vastly different video every single time. But the most important thing is the thumbnail, the title, and the first 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So these guys, like, they open up the show with their they've got the like their opener that and it does all this stuff, and it's 20 seconds of that, or 15 seconds of that, and then hey, today we've got so and so with us, and he's got an amazing story, and he did. But listen, people are already clicking off.
Yeah,
they're already clicking off. Then you got to introduce the person. You're better just to go straight into it, because you only have 30 seconds to get people's attention.
You got 30 seconds. Yeah. And that's why a lot of those shows will go back in, pull out a segment, put that right up front, just so that maybe you stick with it. Right. I do a cold open here because I'm like, hey, either you're going to watch or you're not going to watch. Right. I'm not going to. There's no need for an intro. Don't need all that. Yeah.
YouTube will determine if it's going to show it to other people.
Yeah.
And that's going to be determined by people watching the first 30 seconds of your video, and the type of people, whatever their profile is on YouTube, and whether it's going to show it to more people.
Yeah.
So you have very, very, very little amount of time to get to people.
One of the things, and I'm positive that you feel this, one of the problems with this whole thing is that YouTube's not a very good business partner. Like right now, today, you guys are doing fine, right? But you have very limited control over anything that happens on the YouTube side of the equation. And so if they just lights out your channel, which they do, and they're like, oh, sorry, it was a mistake. And you're like, that's my goddamn business. You can't just pull the plug. So I wouldn't feel comfortable. Like, my show does okay. It's tiny, but we've been at it for a while. We do okay. Not like you. But if they were to unplug it, it would break my heart because I've poured my heart and soul in trying to build something here, and I would have very little recourse. And maybe I could find somebody who knows somebody and to get it fixed, but they're just not a very reliable business partner. So you must be thinking about other ways to exit out, not exit, but change and put things into where you have more control over them.
Well, we have a few TikTok channels, we have a few YouTube channels, and we have a Facebook and Instagram and stuff. We've Spotify, like we've got a bunch of other, but we basically take the YouTube videos and we just chop them all up and repurpose all of that content on different things. So if YouTube were to disappear, it would crush us.
Yeah.
But I think we'd probably go on.
Yeah.
I can't, but you're right. It would be horrible. Do you remember the woman that shot up? Well, was it Google that she shot up because YouTube had taken down her channel and she couldn't get anybody on the phone, and she grabbed a weapon and went to their.
Yeah.
This?
I mean, I don't blame someone for doing that. It's illegal, but it's reasonable because they've built this monolith that you can't get access to, and then they fuck your life up, and then act like it's no big deal.
Yeah, she was very upset because she's living off of this channel, and one day, boom, they just took it down, and they wouldn't tell her, and they couldn't get anybody on the phone, didn't understand what had happened, and so finally she just grabbed a weapon and went to the campus.
Yeah, that's awful. Yeah, so I guess I want to get back to, but you do have access to all these stories. It is hard to make movies, but it is not impossible. So are you trying to do something there where like you become more independent and have more control? I mean, at some point it's find a financier or be one and then get one made and then repeat that process. The stories, people want to see them. Is that something you're interested in doing in a more serious way?
It is, and I'm definitely working on it, but it's a horrible process. I mean,
yes.
I've been through it over and over and over again where I've, you have the meeting and they love you, and then you have a Zoom meeting with 4 or 5 executives and or the producer and a director and a whoever else casting, and you talk to them and they love you, and then they're going to schedule a meeting with their team. That's another 2 or 3 weeks, and then they're going to talk to Jill at Netflix, and then that takes another month to get an appointment, and then Jill is going to get back with them, and then Jill tells him she's going to talk to Tom, but he's on vacation. And 6 months later, they now they're spinning you because they're still waiting for a response, and then a few more months, and after 9 months to a year, you get the, hey, we're going to go ahead and pitch HBO, and you're just like, a fucking waste of time, man. What are we doing? And it's always these people that have these they have amazing credentials, and they've played on all these shows, and they've, but a lot of people, unless you're some big time director, you talk to these people and you look and it's like, okay, you're a 55-year-old man and you've been a part of 2 shows. Like, and you work, and this is what you do. And you've been a part of 2 shows that are okay. You know what I'm saying? So the problem is that it's just hard to get anything done or believe anything that these guys say.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of that. Yeah. And it is this ponderous process. And the thing I'm realizing is that as much as I'm working on the other things, I need to focus on finding independent reserves of money. Where people are like, I'm passionate about whatever this story is, and then look in that bin for stories and say, I would love, like, look, there's a lawyer in Chicago. This is all made up. And that guy is so passionate about Chicago, he will rip a check for $1 million to go tell a Chicago story. But you got to find that dude, and you got to build trust with him. And then you get the check from him. And then he's like, I don't want to make any money. I just want to tell Chicago stories. And so you get to own all the rights, or he just pays you to, to donate them to whatever. Those people exist, but that's a whole different line of business in the same business. And so there's all these competing interests to trying to sort through how to get something made and paid for.
Yeah, I don't know who that guy is. Somebody else has already got that guy's ear.
Yeah.
That would be great if I could get a hold of that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. So, where do you see the channel going then? Just continuing to evolve and do what you're doing, or it's already beyond belief, like how big you are. It's incredible. Great job.
I've had that question in the last month, probably 4 or 5 times.
Hmm.
And I think I'm sorry, I woke up at 3 o'clock this morning.
Oh man. Well, I
Um,
appreciate you taking the time.
no, I'm I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not bored. I'm
No,
just
no, I don't
old,
think that. Yeah.
exhausted. Um,
But you are making me want to yawn now.
I know. It's horrible. So I I mean, everybody, people, but I just, I really think I just want to keep doing, I just want to keep doing, telling these stories and get better and better guests, with better and better stories. Uh, and just keep doing, try and maybe at some point upgrade our equipment, get a slightly,
Mhm.
I really love my studio. I just wish it wasn't in my living room.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
I'd like to move the studio someplace else, and I would slightly change 1 or 2 things, but honestly, it would be very much like it is right now. There would be
Mhm.
very subtle changes.
Yeah,
Uh, Other than that, I'd just love to keep doing, I'd like to make more money at it, that'd be great,
yeah,
but I'm thrilled with the way things are going. I don't
yeah.
know.
It is amazing.
Yeah, I don't know what the next level is. Like, I don't wanna be Mr. Beast. I don't wanna have, Beast games and do all that silliness. I mean, I like telling these guys stories, and I'd love it if somehow or another I could partner with a studio that periodically could turn some of these stories into documentaries
Yeah,
um, and films, series or, you know, major, whatever, motion pictures or something. But if that doesn't happen, it's fine. I'm thrilled with the way things are going. So I hate to even
yeah,
say that. That's such a pipe dream. Like, whenever I hear people, daydream, like, man, what if this or this or this? It's like,
yeah, yeah,
I save my daydreams for when I'm laying in bed at night and I go to sleep to the. I don't like to sit down and have a whole this and that. And because right now things are so good, if that happened, it's great. But things are going so good. I'm so happy. I don't know. I mean, I don't know
yeah,
that there is a progression, or because I feel like
yeah,
this is, I love what I'm doing. I love this.
yeah. It is an incredible life. I mean, my show has completely changed my life, and I'm sure it's true for you too. The people you get to meet, the experiences you get to have. It's for me, it's been a life-defining era of my life, and I hope I get to continue. Look, would I love to explode and go up a million miles? Oh, sure, but there's also a lot of time and money with that too. So if this is where it's at, that's all right. I get so much value, and I can exchange with other people value that I get from my show. It's an amazing life. And considering, look, I was a guy that got shot at. You were a guy in federal prison, and you think about where we were and where we are now, basically the exact same age. It's like I can't even believe I'm alive, let alone having all of these wonders in my life. And you're part of that, man. And I appreciate you coming on the show. I guess I'll let you riff on that, and then we'll just wrap this thing up. And again, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's been fascinating. I didn't want to get into all the other stuff because that's on 100 other shows. I just wanted kind of to see where you're at and who you are, and I appreciate you for taking the time to do that.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you having me on. Good
Yeah.
times.
Anything in closing before we go?
No, I'm good. This is a good change of pace from telling my
Good.
story. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.